Hello, me again. I want to address a very touchy area. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Um, we are Christians and we try to live to a higher standard, but we're also human beings. And this is an area in counseling, whether it be pastoral counseling, secular counseling, psychotherapy, it really doesn't matter which area you choose. This is applicable to all of it. Excuse me. So let's just jump into it full bore. Um, this topic is often avoided, but it has to be addressed. It's just as simple as that. To give you the full, robust background to be a counselor, a pastoral counselor, you need everything, and this is one of those everythings. And this is absolutely essential in pastoral counseling. And that what we're going to be talking about is sexual attraction to those that we counsel. We're also going to talk about therapist vulnerabilities and then the serious issue of sexual relationships with patients or even parishioners, as they're sometimes called, congregants, whatever. Sexual attraction in a counseling relationship is not in and of itself a moral failure, although we have Christian standards to stand by. That sounds like a secular scientific explanation, and it's followed up with it's a human response. Yeah, okay, it is a human response, but the Ten Commandments even addresses this. Uh, what do we do with that attraction, or what we do with that attraction is where ethics, integrity, and spiritual maturity, if you want to call it that, are tested. In pastoral counseling, the stakes are even higher than in secular stuff. We're entrusted with emotional well being. We're also entrusted with spiritual care, with authority, and with sacred trust. Not found on the secular side. I'm not knocking them, just telling you we're pastoral counselors, or you will be. So any misuse of a relationship is not just unethical, it's damaging. It's damaging psychologically, it's damaging relationally, and absolutely damaging spiritually. Does this happen? Of course it happens. Again, we're human beings, but that's not an excuse. So sexual attraction, it's a normal but dangerous reality. Counselors, pastoral or clinical, will sometimes feel attracted to those that they are serving. Again, as a pastor, you have a little bit more fuel related to, excuse me, being able to deal with this than someone on the secular side. Ethics, yes, is a powerful thing, but we got something even more powerful than that, and you know who he is. Where do the attractions come from? I have to name this, but this is common sense. It comes from physical appearance, emotional connection, shared values or experiences, and maybe even the counselor's own unmet needs. Let me tell you what I learned working on my PhD in psychology initially, and then transferring over to Christian counseling because I just didn't like the secular, the ignoring the spiritual side is what I mean to say. But here's what we were taught, and this is true regardless of whether you're secular or if you're um, a Christian counselor. You're particularly in very emotional situations. So you're the counselor, and a female comes to you in need of counseling, and you begin the process. And I may have mentioned this to you already in a past video. You may be the first person in their life who's ever taken time to sincerely listen to what they have to say. And you're not being dismissive, or you're not sitting there playing on your phone while they're spilling their emotions out to you. So here's somebody that, first of all, is beginning to meet emotional needs, and then secondly, beginning to establish trust. That's powerful stuff. And the potential for them to misread your intentions is there. And they may develop an emotional attachment to you, which can turn into a love situation. So you have to be very careful with how you handle uh, counseling and keeping that in mind. I don't have a golden rule for you to follow, other than what ethics and your spirituality says. Or let's switch that. What your spirituality and then your ethics say. It's wrong. Don't do it. Uh, but doesn't mean to be cold in a session. You have to be loving and warm, loving and warm, but you have to do it with some constraint. Hope that makes sense. Okay, so let's look at this. Let's look at this key point, and you can decide if you agree with this. But it is a major point to take away. Attraction's not the problem. It's not saying whether it's right or wrong. What I'm saying is attraction's not the problem. Secrecy and mismanagement, those are the problems. When attraction is denied or attraction is ignored, it tends to grow stronger, it becomes distorted, and then it can lead to rationalization, and that's a no-no. Actually, all three are. You don't want this happening. So you have to be honest with yourself. Common warning signs. These are common sense. Thinking about the client outside of sessions frequently, extending sessions unnecessarily, sharing overly personal information. I often, in my face to face classes, talk about my past experiences related to psychology, not to become intimately familiar with my students. That's okay. Not when it's used to maybe gain affection. I hope that makes sense. Dressing or behaving differently for a specific client. Again, these are common sense. And then yucky, fantasizing about the client. Some of this is a little uncomfortable, folk. In pastoral settings, it can be spiritualized. God brought this person into my life for a reason. This feels deeper than counseling. You think of some of them. We have a unique spiritual connection. These are just one in a million ways that people rationalize. Those are distortions. They're not spiritual insights. Maybe God did bring them into your life, but He brought them into your life for counseling and nothing else. So, what are your vulnerabilities? Turn inward to yourself a minute. Sexual boundary violations don't happen overnight. They can, but they usually build. They emerge usually from vulnerabilities that you haven't either admitted to yourself, or you have, but you haven't really done any self examination. And there's some common ones, and these will sound familiar to you. Loneliness. Counselors and pastors alike And pastoral counselors often experience isolation. So an emotional connection with a counselee can be refreshing. It can feel like relief. Another one on our list, unmet emotional or marital needs. If a counselor's own relationships are strained, that can unconsciously cause the counselor to seek fulfillment elsewhere. Again, these are human things. Everybody needs to belong, to be wanted, to be needed, to be accepted. Those are basic psychological human needs, and it extends to relationships. Excuse me. Good barbecue. Narcissistic needs, being admired, needed again, or idolized. It pumps your ego. If you're idolized, oh yeah, you're the counselor. Don't let that go to your head. Stress and burnout. When you're exhausted, your judgment is lowered, and that can increase impulsivity. Uh, be careful. What is burnout? Let me cover that a minute because it's important. It's a mistaken thing. People say, oh, I'm burned out. I've done this job 20 years. I'm just burned out. That's not the burnout I'm talking about. Stress and burnout. I like to change the word from burnout. Stress and basically just incapable of carrying on. Because burnout is a psychological condition. It was studied back in the 60s or 70s. I forget the fellow that did the work. This therapist, psychological therapist, ran a drug um, rehab hospital, and he noticed that his staff would frequently miss work, and they would report things like headaches or sicknesses or just exhausted, those kind of things, um, psychosomatic stuff. So he began to study these. They reported depression. They reported lack of sleep or reported sleeping too much. These are depressive symptoms. And what he found out was that the staff, in dealing with these people who were highly troubled because of addiction, were uh, they were displaying some of the same problems as the patients were, and it was just an ongoing cycle. Um, Dealing emotionally with something that's um, highly emotional, if that makes sense. So he described these symptoms of burnout, eventually loss of interest in the job itself. That's the kind of burnout we're talking about here. Yeah, you just heard me say pastor counselors can burn out. It's true. The frustrations that go along with the job. Counseling somebody and you think you've done a job and they come in a week later and they've relapsed and all the alarm bells go off. Lack of accountability, another one on our list. Ethical failure. Who do you account to? Yourself? Well, you need to put that on a higher pedestal than you do maybe. Who's our ultimate director of that? I think his name is God. Boundary confusion. Some pastoral counselors blur rules or blur roles. Friend, spiritual guide, authority figure, therapist. You have to have clear boundary guidelines for those four things. Where does it stop? And then here's something that's unpleasant. Ethical failures are not really about desire. They're about self-deception. Common rationalizations. I'm helping them. They initiated it. Ugh. This is mutual. Another, ugh. No one will be harmed. Yet another, yeah, all these are, ugh, they're wrong. Don't fall into that trap. Power imbalance makes true consent impossible. Who's in charge? You are, but it's a mutual thing. So a counselee is in a vulnerable position because of this mutuality, with you being in the lead, more or less. They're vulnerable because they're seeking help. They're vulnerable because they trust you, they trust authority in these situations. And then they very often are emotionally dependent or become that way. Think back a while ago to what I said, that you may be the first one that's paid them a lot of attention. That's good and bad in some cases. Responsibility lies with you. So handle it carefully. And then let's look at things that have maybe gone awry a little bit. Sexual relationship ships with patience, ethical and spiritual consequences. I don't have to tell you about the spiritual consequences. We may talk about it a little bit. Any sexual relationship with a counselee is unethical, period. In some cases, it's illegal. Even after this person is not a client of yours anymore, sometimes relationships are still considered unethical because of lingering influence and dependency. You've all seen news stories like that. Why is it serious? It's a violation of trust. A counseling relationship is built on safety. Sexual involvement actually destroys that foundation. Another one, exploitation of power. A counselor holds emotional and spiritual authority. That's just inherent. They come to you because of that. Okay, here's somebody that can help me. So violation of that is destroying the foundation of it all. Psychological harm. Clients can experience confusion, shame, trauma, and loss of faith and trust, not only in you and the counseling profession or pastoral counselors everywhere, but in other people as well. You can do a lot of psychological harm by these violations. You can do a lot of spiritual harm. You can distort a person's view of God. You can distort their experience of faith. You can export you can harm uh, their view and trust in spiritual leadership. All distortions. And then we can even extend that to the community. Loss of credibility, harm to the church or ministry, Christianity in general, of those who aren't believers, and then their ripple effects that spread throughout families and congregations. We've all seen the stories. I'm not going to call any names because they could probably sue me, but you know the names of those who've taken that trust. And we fight a hard enough battle with those that don't believe, and they call us hypocrites, and we answer that by saying, no, we're humans. Uh, so you need to cause yourself to tread on thin ice. Don't do that. Even if the counselee appears willing or even initiates a relationship, it's still exploitation. Your job is to keep things at arm's length. How do we go about taking care of this? Safeguards, what are they? Self-awareness. Regularly examine your emotions and your emotional responses. Never counsel in isolation. be accountable, peer supervision, mentorship, honest feedback. Never counsel in isolation. Get the word out to your cohorts. Establish clear boundaries. Defined session times. You have to set these day one, and you have to explain, look, we have this set time, and I have to stick to this for various reasons. So don't be offended if we reach the closer to the end of a session, and I'll warn you, okay, we're running out of time. It has nothing to do with me not wanting to help you. It has everything to do with trying to be able to keep things in an ethical order. Uh, Appropriate self-disclosure. What does that mean? Talk to your cohorts about situations related to desires, even anything that would dismantle your position. And don't have dual relationships. What does that mean? Dual relationship, counselor and romantic partner. Refer when you need to. If your relationship with a client becomes persistent in terms of attraction, refer that person to another counselor. And then you can follow the path of Christianity here: prayer, confession, reflection, humility. Bear all those in mind. Most churches and ministries, if you're pastors, you know this, have explicit ethical guidelines, uh, and you need to follow those. I'm not preaching to you or counseling you, I'm delivering information. Be true to the faith, be faithful to the trust. I hope that this was not too hard on you, but it had to be addressed. It's part of the system, it's part of the curriculum. Don't take it with a grain of salt, mull it over. All right, so this is the final in the series, week 7. I hope that you were educated related to ethics. I hope you see that there's a strong demand for ethical standards and being true to the faith. God bless.